Live. In the name of God, the most gracious of all, thank you so much for joining us back with Lachine Institute. We have taken a break during the summer and now we are back with a bang. So I'm starting today with my friend Aisha M. Ali. So let me just give you a brief introduction of who she is because it's hard to define somebody who's so multi-talented, but I'm going to give it my best shot. So she's the creative director at Oshi Brownie Studio. She's the co-founder of Cosmic Tribe, and she's a graduate of the esteemed Indus Valley Institute in Karachi. She has received the Zahul al-Ikhlaq Award and the Shamin Arif Award, alongside having many popular digital works like Butterfly Effect, Plut Chick Sentiment, Cosmic Fusion. There are many others, but you have to find her online and see it. And she's a practitioner of mixed media, digital photo manipulation, 3D renderings, and digital painting. So I will be sharing some photos of me. If you can manipulate them to make me look much better, I'd be very grateful. Aisha, how are things? You're in Karachi right now, right?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ali, for the introduction, and thank you so much for having me. Yes, I'm in Karachi at the moment. Yeah, so I just came back from London.
I see. Wonderful. I hope Karachi is doing much better. I have quite a few friends in Karachi and I keep up to date with them. So wonderful to be in touch. So Aisha, let's dive right in because there's a lot of ground to cover. I've been watching your journey on the news and on social media, and I was so happy that we have this opportunity. So I'm going to start by talking about art. So these are the artists that I know. I'm just going to name some of them, and I have to ask you a very simple question. So I know everyone knows Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Botticelli, Rembrandt, Dali, Picasso, Escher, Matisse, Frida Kahlo, George O'Keeffe, Gustav Klimt. There's so many. And locally, we had Sadkan, we had Hussein, we had Raja Ravi Verma of the street art in India. And even today, young artists like yourself, I know Khola Abbasi, Amna Khan, Shazia Salman, Laiba Beg, and my friend in America, Karina Dorothy Krell. She'll kill me if I don't mention her. So she's one of the first to actually introduce me to NFT, and we'll jump on that. So all of these people use paint on canvas, all of them. Why digital art in your regard, and what about it speaks to you?
So first off, I would like to just say that I myself am a huge fan of traditional art, because this is something from which my journey actually, started, it prompted, and that is something that I do up till today even, because without drawing or without the actual act of holding a pencil or that joy of drawing, I cannot actually think. So that is something that I think always do. It's just that now, living in that time that we understand half of our life through the digital mediums, we are exposed so much, and we just can't neglect that fact anymore, that things are changing how we understand them. So the relevance of art and how it is experienced has changed, right? And because previously, before camera, I mean, just giving you a bit of history, that before camera, because we didn't know that there could be such an exquisite or originality in the way that images could be captured, so there was no comparison to which we could have drawn parallel that okay, images can be captured in this way. But in today's time, there's a huge comparison, and I mean, with these amazing photographers now, so it brings that question that where does an artist, especially a canvas artist, stands, right? With all these different styles. So I mean, there are definitely ups and downs of digital. There are things that cannot be achieved by digital, but there are definitely a lot of new horizons which can only be done digitally.
Tell me a bit more about that. For example, because when I think of digital art, as a very amateurish practitioner of Photoshop and Illustrator, I have some idea of how you can take somebody like this and turn him into like a superstar. But what are some of the restrictions? Because I was going to ask you about the instrument. What about the instrument do you find interesting? What are the restrictions? Talk a bit more about that.
So firstly, let me just talk a bit about digital art and the kinds of digital arts which are available, so that I think it will be better, much easier to understand. Because generally, by what graphic artists have been doing, what we have been looking at like past decade or something, so that has been more into towards, okay, 3D animation is new to us, but we are familiar with what graphics are, what illustration is, but then no one is thinking about how digital can be a new world in itself, right? Because
Right.
like it's hard to express, like I don't even know how to put that in words, but digital is something where you can make your own world, but that the world doesn't have to be 3D or 2D or 4D or any one way of measuring it, right?
Right.
And then again,
Right.
you have mentioned a lot of artists, and I mean these artists are known for having their own world in their paintings, and that's why they're known
Absolutely.
for you live with that artist. And coming back to the digital time, I think it's the same tools. We have softwares, we have tech, we have machine learning now, we have code. So all of these are equipments to do that, to create the product or the art, or however we want to like describe it. But then again, I would say like these are just tools, and as an artist, there can be a lot of different ways you fuse them together,
Yep.
and that's why it is more interesting to me that living in a time where digital and the tangible art exist side by side. So what can be
Absolutely.
the new methods you can use to kind of fuse them and explore more, and there's so much more in it. So yeah.
It's almost like when you talk about digital art, it reminds me of Da Vinci, because traditionally we have considered art and science to be separated, and Da Vinci was one of the few people who brought them together. And when you talk about machine learning, because I dabble a bit in machine learning with my company, but I find that to be very interesting that those two things are coming together and you're producing some wonderful works. That's a great start, because now I'm going to read something that you have written. You said it somewhere, and I have it. And I just want to question you a bit about it. So you write, and I quote, "My practice interrogates bizarreness and blurred boundaries between reality and illusions, collective memory and desires, genders and set roles." Sentence one: "I'm interested in exploring costumes, drama, and the role of acted truth in the construction of how larger meaning is perceived in society." It almost sounds like something Foucault or Nietzsche would say. I found that to be so interesting. And there's so much to unpack here. So I'm not going to unpack it because we have limited time. But I find the juxtaposition of interrogating the historical context through a futuristic instrument to be quite interesting. It's very much like Hayao Miyazaki in Japan and all his animation. I find that an interesting juxtaposition. Talk a bit about these two sentences that I've just shared. There's so much here, but talk about that.
So, like the fact that you just mentioned that I there are boundaries, and whenever we are moving from one era to another, from one technique to another, things get translated, the
Yeah,
information gets lost, right? But then also new information gets added, and I think that is one joy that I find working with digital and tangible side by side. And sometimes it's very hard for me to explain to people that, like, what is the process? Do you sketch first, or is this the idea, or do
yeah,
you like go into a software directly? And then I had to explain them that although this is how it's done, right? Like if
yeah,
I speak globally, that okay, first an artist conceives an idea, then you sketch it out, make a storyboard if need be, and then take it to the actual execution of it. But the point
right,
is, no one is telling us to do it in this order, right? Like textile
right.
designers sketch it first and then go towards the actual execution of the textile garment, right?
Yeah,
But
yep,
I do things opposite. I I
right.
I I fabricate the materials in the softwares. I have all the archives with materials that are in my head. That okay, this is the final image. This is how it's supposed to be done. And sometimes those things, if I talk in its complete sense, cannot even be made in a 3D material if I had to just skip the digital part. So it's then interesting for me to then through those materials and the things that I have in my archive, like I all like once this time I collected only the hair samples of people, and this was my project, like so if different people, not actual hair, but like hair color shades and
Oh, thank
skins.
God. I was like, wow, you just
No,
resurrected
not
again. Okay.
so just giving you an example that an archive or the data can be collected in so many different ways, right? And once you have the
Right.
data for anything, then you can kind of dissect it. And my different projects had different data collections. Like for this one project, I did with the gems and different like precious stones that are found in Pakistan. And for the other
Yeah.
project, I had to go in a lab and look at these specimens. Because even
Right.
I had my own background as a pre-medical student, so I mean I was interested in diagrams and stuff like that.
Right.
So
Of course.
So my point is that the data is very important. And when I talk about this idea of blurred boundaries between the truth and the illusions, right? So I actually
Yeah.
mean that that where is that truth that we are trying to rectify, or even talk about with people? So where is that information coming from? So to
Right.
trace that, we have to first realize that there is no information that we're getting that is out of the biases, right? Whatever we are trying
Right.
to say through our art has some previous influence coming in.
Of course.
Um,
Of course.
and given that, then it brings us to this. Like, I've been looking at this philosopher Jean Baudrillard. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He
I know the
actually
name,
talks.
but I haven't read him. No.
Yeah, so he actually talks about this idea of hyper reality and the era that we're moving into, right? That things are
Yeah.
not just real anymore; they're hyper real. So I mean, again, it's an idea that can be perceived in so many different ways. That where are those boundaries being set if the original is even original anymore? So in my practice, when I go back and forth from one information to another, from one medium to another, I mean, this is one angle that I'm also trying to explore continuously, and it has been constant for past 3 years. That through textiles and costumes, this angle comes in, and I think I'm secretly also trying to explore that how much of the information is original, where was the influence taken for this particular design, how much of the
Yeah.
westernized influence. So these ideas are parallel, side by side.
That's fantastic. There's so many social lenses that are coming together, and you're looking at them through your work. Just a bit more on you. Thank you so much for such a detailed answer. But I had a question. Um, I've never painted, or shall I say, I've never painted well. But I know of artists who stand in front of their canvas on the easel and they experiment. There's almost an aspect of form finding where they are just where the art emerges. Everyone goes with the idea of something and they paint it. Sometimes the art emerges. With paint on canvas, I can see that happening because if you're painting, some colors uh, come forward and they turn into other things. Does that happen in digital art as well? Or is it in digital art, do you have to be much more structured?
So yes, to just to like explain this further and give a yes no answer. Yes, it's the same process, although it's less explored. Like, I would say, because like
Right.
if I open a 3D software, there are literally layers. You can control the layers more. Like if I'm building a character sketch, but
Yeah,
that this time, just like a sculptor, a sculptor is looking at at the form from all different angles. And in the
absolutely.
software, you have the same thing. You can control the light. You can even control the camera, the way the camera is seeing. So this much control you can't even have in the real life. And then you have all the minute details. Like, the more you can imagine, that can happen. And I don't think this much can be achieved on a canvas. So yeah, the things that you find in digitally, it's the same thing. It's the
Yeah,
same vision. But yeah, the
that's beautiful.
tangible
Yeah.
touch is lost. Yeah, that is one thing.
What's lost? Sorry, say that again.
The tangibility, like it
Right.
is existing in a 2D form unless you 3D print it out. So that is another way of.
That's a whole other game.
Yeah.
In that regard, because I don't know if you're one of the first practitioners, but you're one of the first ones that I've started to see publicly from Pakistan. Uh, have you noticed other artists starting to move or starting to dabble in both, not just tangible canvas, but also starting to get into digital art? Is that a trend that you are seeing in Pakistan, or is that something that you alone are doing?
So in Pakistan, I've now seen like past 5 or 6 months, like since the idea of NFT has been more evolving and stuff, people are more aware now. So I've seen people doing more of the comics, more of the 3D art, but I haven't come across anyone who says that okay, in the layering or in the process of my art, there was some information which was done by AI, by data collection, and then it was translated on canvas, or maybe some part was printed, which was a digital art, and then on top of it you did something. So I haven't seen this kind of juxtaposition. But
Right.
yeah, definitely there are artists who are doing now comics and illustration. I mean, there have been a lot of artists this decade alone. If I talk
Yeah.
about it, there are a lot of artists.
Absolutely, and I hope they do actually, because Pakistan has such a rich landscape historically and also in current affairs and geographically, but it rarely comes into comic book form or other avenues. We've had a very select group of painters normally who normally weren't earning good money and were always looking for patronage. And I'm glad that this is happening. And I'm sitting in Montreal and I'm able to see your work.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. And I'm so glad that you mentioned NFTs, because you're a smart guest, because you know what the next question is going to be. Because for the uninitiated, even blockchain and artificial intelligence are foreign concepts. I know for myself, just 2 years ago, if somebody said blockchain, I'd be like, I have no idea what that means. And then there are NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens. When we look for them, we obviously come across Jack Dorsey from Twitter, and there's some emerging artists on the art scene, Beeple and Ferocious, and a couple of others that I've
Yeah.
seen. And they're particularly on the Ethereum market. But for the uninitiated, which is most of the world, why don't you talk about what they are and how they play a role in the art scene in particular?
So, firstly, NFTs is not now a new concept as it was 2 years ago, but at that time it was just like people were just saying, okay, it's just a hype. This is not going to stay, but it stayed, and I think it's going to, go further, because
Yeah,
we know cryptocurrency from past 7 years, but at that time we were not taking it seriously, and now today we are thinking, okay, so we are talking about how Ethereum rates are, how Bitcoins are. So now people are more aware, right? But then we have artists like people to thank for, who have, like, with their one collage they have exploded the world, and now everyone wants to be an NFT artist.
yeah,
But I would say that for people who are still new in this, um, it is hard now because it's getting more and more saturated every day, like, because it's the
yeah,
new hype, and internationally there's a lot of competition. I have been myself into NFTs, and I've learned a few things, obviously, and now now I'm more inclined towards me getting to know more artists and how that landscape evolves. So yeah, I'm
yeah,
more, I'm more into it now, but at start I was not. But yeah, NFTs, like, non-fungible tokens which you
yeah,
store on a blockchain, and it's like, you mint an artwork, you have to pay some gas fees, and that depends on a platform to platform. You pay
yeah.
that, and basically
Mhm.
you get a token, and that is like a token of originality, that this artwork is done by this artist. And sometimes they would even go and check that, this artist is not plagiarizing it. So they have their
Right.
own ways of checking. And some of the platforms like Foundation, they are doing a great work, because
Yep.
they have a very set criteria of the artist that they are displaying, and it's through invite, and it's very exclusive and stuff. But then the other
Right.
platforms, everyone can just make an account, and they don't even ask for fees. But once you sell an artwork, they ask for that uh, minting fee afterwards. So every
Yep.
platform has their own ways. But yeah, NFTs and blockchain, I think it's a very good tool, because previously there was no method of check and balance. I think, like, if someone is doing something original, how would you know the origin? Like, we know that we have social media and we can trace that who posted it first, but other than that there was no other way, right? And but now
Yep.
even singers, other people in different fields, not just art, they are selling collectibles, they're selling ideas, they're selling their writings, songs,
Yep.
videos, so you can collect a big artist now. So I mean, that is very exciting. uh,
It
it's a
is
great.
very exciting, and what's interesting is that you're doing in Pakistan, because I would argue that even your parents or my parents would say, how do I turn this into money? How do I use an NFT to buy a car? And for them, because I say uninitiated, particularly for that group of people and for people who just don't know it. Um, so if somebody uses the NFT opportunity to mint your work or to buy your artwork, what does that give you? You now have a token. What do you do with it?
So basically, a token is like, an evidence. If I put it in very simple words, it's like an evidence which is stored on a collective blockchain, and that blockchain connects over the platforms. It's not just about like one platform. It connects. It has information. Like there are some websites which connect even to their artist profile back to the thread, right? So it's not just like
Right.
okay, that information is just on that platform, so someone else can put the same artwork on some other website with their name. So that cannot happen, and that's where
Right.
things get interesting, because now whatever that you're producing, if you think it's worth investing in and it's something that can be collected, then
Yeah.
I think it's worth putting it out, because then as soon as you put it out, it's there for anyone who wants to support you as an artist,
Yeah.
and then again people have their own reservations in selecting an artist, because now the market is so but yeah, I think it's a good way for an artist to kind of create an at least awareness of originality.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm going to make a note of this. I'm going to connect you to my friend Karina Dorothy Krell. Karina, if you're watching this, you need to be in touch with Aisha, because Karina lives in Florida and she's also an artist and a creator, very much for a year or two through LinkedIn. And she talks about NFTs all the time. And she even invited me on her show to talk about it. And I was like, can you please explain it to me? I'm a politics. I have no idea. But what I find interesting is that you're talking about singers, writers, other creative producers starting to dabble in that field, and crypto is becoming very much a real thing. No matter how many times the traditionalists try to ignore it, it is a wave that you simply can't fight. So just embrace it. Um, I
And
did I did have
in fact, many canvas artists who have been, practicing for like all their life, they've been doing canvases. They are now selling the digital copy of their art with their artwork as a supplement to the first collector, whoever is collecting. So yeah, that is also one of the trends that
good
has been going
God.
around.
Good Lord. Wow. Yeah, no, my friend Hola Basi, she's currently in Cyprus, but she's from Islamabad, as far as I recall. And she paints really well. And I remember talking to her about NFTs, but she didn't make any ground because she wasn't as active in it. Let's see. Somebody is writing, thanks, dear Aisha and Ali Pasha. Who are you? Kadir Tukman, thank you so much for joining us. If you have a question, I have a digital artist right in front of me, and I'd love to ask her more things. Aisha, before talking about the next topic, because I really wanted to touch upon gender with you, do you see any dangers to this marrying together of art and science? One thing that I keep thinking about, and I was watching a movie yesterday called Red Notice with The Rock and Ryan Reynolds and so forth, and a part of that film, they used deep fake technology, which is technology used for digital manipulation. And we've seen so many applications of that. Currently, we see them in funny videos or something, but that can also have a dangerous impact. Do you see, because you're a practitioner in the field, when you talk to other artists or other people who do the same thing, do you talk about some dangers that might emerge this?
Yeah. So actually, I was just doing my previous project, and the theme while we were selecting along with my team of artists, because one of the artists was actually a coder too, like hardcore coder, and the other person was into the sound designing and sound engineering, and I was a visual artist. So
Right.
we were talking about like. Since we are moving towards AI, and it becomes important that we question that how AI and its emotion mapping ability, basically, if I talk about the emotion mapping
Please
ability,
do.
because the like if I see Facebook, Snapchat, so their latest, if you see their latest update, it is about that you now need to give a reaction which is other than the like button. So why is that happening? They want more data about the users. They want to
Mm,
know whether you are liking it, loving it, you're hating it, so that then they can add more posts which are like sponsored towards you.
yeah.
And basically they're collecting data which is more refined, right? And in a way
Right.
they're collecting your emotion. So I mean, emotion collecting has a price, and that's what we were thinking, that when you are integrating AI to a level that even your emotions are being used, and it's being integrated in data, then such projects or such research should be done, which can kind of question it, if not solve that issue, that why is this
Wonderful.
happening, and to kind of address the consequences of it. So my project, which is actually what you mentioned in the start, the Plochik sentient,
Yeah.
So the sentient word we add with an M so that it becomes sentiment, and then again it was a word play so that we could again talk about the robots, and kind of also question that if we are moving towards a time where digital fashion is something which is a more hype than the regular fashion, especially
Yeah.
after COVID,
Yeah.
especially post COVID. So again the robots are taking over as human models, and again my practice is also about 3D modeling, and again how my some of the models in my work are not actual human beings. They were constructed as a 3D mimicked
Yeah.
puppets. So I
Yeah.
mean, these ideas are side by side, and for that project we actually questioned the emotion mapping ability of AI, and we did that through a digital fashion show which was done by robots, and then those robots were wearing digital fabrics and stuff. So
Amazing.
we are already into this thing that we are we are talking about the hazards of it, and even like the shows like Black Mirror, if you've seen it. So
I have. I love it.
so
Love it.
it's every episode is talking about new technology, and I mean someone
Yep.
is inventing them, someone is visualizing them, and then it becomes part of it. So I mean those are also artists, so artists are
Absolutely.
adding to it. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, before I jump on to my next question, I actually want to share something because I don't think you know this, but I'm originally an architect. And I
okay.
studied as an architect from Turkey. And while I was there, this is in 2012, we would talk a lot about stereolithography, which is 3D printing. And we would talk about Issey Miyake and fashion and architects in Japan who've started using 3D printing techniques in fashion. And if you just Google algorithmic fashion design, you obviously know what I'm talking about for my
Yes.
audience. Algorithmic fashion design, you see countless examples of beautiful fractalized works or works that are generated in Rhino or Grasshopper or 3D Max, Maya, Katia. There's so many software that I was exposed to, but I moved towards politics because that was my real passion. But I always remember that. And I always, whenever I see people do things like this, I say, wow, they must have used this because it's so it's so exciting. Um, so we see a lot of resistance in some fields when something new comes along. What I find amazing is that somebody like you is working on canvas and on digital, and you're seeing others are doing that too. But with augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, NFTs, crypto, we are seeing a huge, monumental move towards the digital
Yeah,
sphere.
definitely.
Do you think the people who use the traditional modes of practicing, would you see a resistance coming from them in this regard?
I think yes. If I talk to like the the more experienced artists, especially like the generation before me, if I even start a conversation of digital, so sometimes it is very hard to cope up because they would tell me that how things are so good when you're holding a paintbrush that it can never be felt. It can never be felt in a on a screen, and I do agree with them because there is a reason why when you are engaging your senses, right?
Yeah.
And there is this impetus, there's so much inclination. You are smelling the paint, you are in that environment, you are
Mm,
holding a brush, and that is something which is an experience in its own right, and that's why it's
yeah.
called painting. I think it's a continuous process, right?
Right.
But
Right.
when I talk about digital, and this is something which I tell them, that again we are moving towards a time where most of the time of the day is spent looking at a screen, and that screen is 2D, right? So what
Absolutely.
is the relevance of the real life that you're trying to negate here? Because for me the process of creating art is as much important as the final product, and therefore
Wonderful.
the
Yep.
process of like whatever that I'm doing, and the medium of it, like the medium of expression and the process itself, is as much important as the final outcome, if I would like to call it a
Absolutely.
product. So in that
Absolutely.
regards, I think a digital image can talk more about the issues of the digital times, rather than if I put that on the canvas, then it becomes an image, an experience in its own, but it can never address those issues which are
Right.
of the medium itself, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. No, so true. For example, Lachine Institute, which is my company, we use natural language processing and text mining a lot to help people write better. And we teach the machine how to write better, and it starts teaching people how to write better. But that doesn't take away the creative writing aspect that every human being has, and we try to encourage that gap. We don't want to one to take over the other. Uh, Dr. Ushna Rupa Narayan, former MP in the National Assembly of South Africa. Thank you so much. This was very informative. The process and medium is important. Greetings from South Africa. Thank you, Doctor. Wonderful to hear from you. Aisha, I'd love to see some of your works if you have any in front of you or with you before we jump on to the question about women's involvement. Do you have anything you could share with our audience?
Yeah, I actually had my sketchbook even. Like, if you want to see the start, how I think, I don't know.
I'd love to.
Okay, so this is my sketchbook. Like, it's very messy. This is how I
Right.
start with
Okay.
ideas.
I mean, you're an artist. There's no
Yeah.
such thing as messy. That. Wow. Okay. Look at that.
So this is how I was looking at the textures of hair and different
Right.
characters and studies of specimens. Just to give you like how the ideas start. In the start, it's very raw. You can't even think that okay, this is going to somehow translate into digital or somehow is
Yeah.
going to be. So
Right. And you've done this just with a pencil.
no, different mediums. So here
Right.
it's ink, but this is charcoal.
Can you
And then this
centralize
is
it a bit? I don't think people can see. It's just a bit to the. I see. Okay. Right.
yeah. Yeah, so this is graphite. The hair drawing is graphite.
Wow. Good Lord.
This is my like sketchbook where I put down and pen down all my ideas. And I think
Yeah.
for me, drawing is like a way to think. So I give a lot of time to my sketchbook. Sometimes even
Right.
more time than my canvases.
This is
So that's
insane.
why.
I mean, yeah, this is wonderful. Okay.
And this is a very heavy sketchbook.
No, you can put it down. It's okay. There's so much great
No,
work
no,
here.
yeah. So like this.
Oh, look at
I
that.
think.
Look at that. I see. Wow. I happen to know quite a few people at Indus Valley, and I loved Indus Valley and Beacon House in Lahore and NCA, and I love seeing these works. Wow. Okay. So there's a lot of thought that goes into whatever you're making.
Sometimes even for the environment I'm thinking, sometimes I'm not. So it really depends upon the project. Like
Right.
this was a spatial drawing where I was thinking about the placement of characters in the
Yep.
3D software. So I was just thinking about that.
Hmm.
So these are some of my like initial works, and then the works which are behind me.
Yep.
These are my works from the thesis time and right after. So these are the canvases that I used to paint, and this is from my recent work, recent exhibition. So because I was talking about women empowerment and in the local context, I was also referring to wheels and abayas, but also in a way that it can talk about the pollution, different kinds of pollution, and the idea of pollution.
Yep.
How can the idea of pollution be talked about in its wider context? Like, okay, there are some kinds of pollution which are environmental. Like noise, water, but then what is the gendered pollution?
What's going on over there? I find it fascinating. That's such a wonderful painting.
This one?
What? Yeah. What's so where the eyes are typically there's something else happening. Talk a bit about that. What's going on there?
Okay, so first, this character was designed in a 3D software, and at that time, I was not thinking that okay, this is not going to come on canvas because I had no idea how to do it. At that time, this character only existed in a 3D software. I was designing the headgear by recycling different materials, and those materials were something which I found in my room, in my kitchen utensils and stuff. So I was just like putting them together to see if I like them or not. And this was how it started. But then I thought that okay, it looks like an abaya because for one, it's like black, and the other thing, because I was adding jewelry, I was referring to our culture and how like on weddings, there is this jewelry, like this over celebration of things and overwhelming information. So like two ideas side by side, right? like that
Yep.
abaya, the simplicity, and but that wedding culture, which is like too much, right? So
Yep.
keeping them both in mind, I was just thinking about the women persona, but also in a non-conventional way, because a woman is either seen as an object of pleasure in the media, or either it's like totally covered, right? So I was
Yep.
giving it more of an warrior kind of a self-empowered kind of a person, but also
Yep.
keeping in mind that what our culture depicts, right? Which is
Yep.
covering about the gays, about many different ideas. I mean, I don't know if I can if I can even address all of them. But then I translated that image by printing it, and then on
Right.
top of it there are layers of paint. I'm not sure
Yeah.
if you can see the, like the texture of it, but like
I
this.
can actually. I was just looking at that top brown. Brown. Sorry, brown is the color I
Yeah,
see. That
yeah,
part.
yeah.
Wow.
And then there is paint on it, and then I had to go back and then print out some of my jewelry designs, which were also in 3D and they were not in real. So I mean, in a way, when I'm explaining to someone that okay, my final work is on canvas, because obviously I had to display it in a gallery of Pakistan
Yeah.
which supports a traditional method of display, but at the
Yep.
same time the process involved a lot of data collection, which was coming from a different sources, right? And that becomes the hard part, explaining people. So yeah, this is
Absolutely.
one of those. And then this one,
Oh, that's a big one. Oh wow! Wow! Good God! Wow. Okay.
yeah, so this one is also
I,
like
I
done with
understand by the
my,
experiential part because it's almost like I want to see it in person. There's so much material layering
yeah,
happening there.
like it's catching shine in some places, and then it's matte finish in some other places,
Yeah.
and then there's
Black
in
is
other
matte. Yeah.
places there's like a lot of thick paint sitting on top of each other. So obviously you
Absolutely.
cannot
Yeah.
see that on screen, and that's what I mean
No,
when I
I
say
can't. I can't see that,
tangible.
but just the color is amazing to me.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. How long did it take you to paint this one?
I mean, do you mean like only the paint part, or
No, no,
like the?
the whole thing. Sorry, I didn't mean paint. To create it.
Okay, for the entire piece, I think on each piece, if I plus, I think it took more than 2 weeks, like at least 1 week on one
Right.
piece. Yeah, and I
Right.
used to give like 8 hours a day to my work, because sometimes the
Oh my.
details are so minute, and I was going in with gold and silver and on top of it, and sometimes layers take a lot of time to dry. So it really depends from one piece to another. But yeah, these ones took a lot of time.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to reach out to my cousin Faisal Aftab, other people, Amir Sarfraz, all the people who have good access to funds and people who are interested in investing and who have a strong cultural leaning. And I'm going to request this. Aisha said today that she has to print out her works and put it in a studio in Pakistan, not a studio, a gallery in Pakistan, because the means of displaying works is still very traditional. Let us all come together and invest in VR, AR types of experiences. So if I want to see Aisha's work, instead of going to a gallery, either I can see it from my own home, or I could go to a gallery, which is an empty hall, and I just put on glasses and I can see them how they were created. Let's talk about that. I'm going to reach out to some people and I'm going to refer them to this interview because I think that I think that could be nice. I think there's scope for that. Don't you think?
For sure, because if I because I remember when I went to Europe, and I actually when I went to Berlin Biennale. So although I see more of the art daily on my Instagram than any other way, but when I went there, I saw that okay, now they are having new media art museums, new media art galleries, and they call
Right.
themselves new media art for a reason, because the artists who are displayed there, they are not referring themselves as a digital artist, or even as a medium based artist. These artists don't
Right.
even call themselves mixed media artists, they call themselves new media, because one day they can be working with video, other day they just feel like including some technology. Maybe that
Yep.
person is from MIT or something, they have this amazing exposure to mixing different technologies, and now they're coming
Yep.
with that information and putting an
Absolutely.
installation, right? So we
Absolutely.
need more of that kind of spaces which are more responsive to the art and the ideas, which are one research based, secondly it kind of breaks those boundaries between medium,
Absolutely.
right? And even when we
Absolutely.
say digital, there is not just one word digital, because people usually think that, oh, if they're calling it digital, it's either an animation or it's a film, but I tell them that it's a starting point, because we have been seeing
Absolutely.
these for the longest time. But with AI and stuff, like one of my projects that I did, we used my artworks and my headgears and the designs that I did. Some of them were the real constructions, and then I took them into the software. And I remember that in the final output, we added them with this code, and anyone could see themselves like we are looking through the camera, web
Yep.
camera, and
Yep.
the code is supposed to read their emotion, that are you 50% sad today, are you 40% happy, are you is this anticipation, and based on that, the code and like all the coding that we did for it, it's going to decide that which costume are you going to wear for the picture, your digital persona. So that kind of projects is something which I am interested in, because I think it adds science, it adds coding, it adds again emotional mapping, research, data collection, visual art. It's all coming together, just like a film with, it has cast, it has music, it has background, the art direction, right? So I think it's so interesting that, if we start exploring these things now, just imagine where these can, take you. So that project was in particular very exciting for me.
The possibilities are almost endless. That sounds so interesting. How you feel leads to how you dress that day for that's incredible. And it's hard for humans to do it, therefore machines can do it for us, and that's really wonderful. Okay, we've talked a lot about NFTs, technology, and art. I now want to talk about gender and social lenses. So you've been a proponent of women's empowerment. You're breaking visual norms of beauty, where it's color of skin or what constitutes as beauty, through Oshi Brownie Studio, and you focus on diversity in fashion, and you've done that. But these markets are rigid, as far as I know, and these sensibilities and mentalities are very rigid. They don't want change. They want to see that one beautiful face which they think is beautiful. What challenges have you faced there, and how rigid have you found them?
Oh, there have been a lot of challenges. Like I remember the first time I delved into this idea of beauty, I was using my own body as an as a metaphor, because I didn't want to critique using any other body. And because sometimes, when you're talking about these sensitive issues, the critique can go either way, and then people start saying, okay, just because you wanted to do something bizarre, you didn't take yourself. So I, just to give you a reference, in the start I was not comfortable talking about these things. And I
Yep.
remember I was using my own insecurities about how I need to be, and my own idea of perfection as a lens to
Yep.
see things. And then once I went into that idea, and I was quoting a lot of, not exactly quoting, but taking references of a lot of perfect body images, perfect models, and how, what are their lives in comparison of how we create the idea of perfection.
Yep.
I came to this idea that, more than the actual object, or the actual, I shouldn't be using object, but this is the body is being objectified, right?
Of course.
So instead of just seeing the object, it's more important the way of seeing it too, because this is an idea which is not addressed enough, I think.
Right.
The ways of seeing something is very important, because if I'm judging something to be right or wrong, that is
Yep.
secondary, because that is just my opinion, that if this thing should be right, this is how it should be, or it should be not. But the foremost thing is that how am I looking it? Am I looking it through my own gender, the set gender, if I associate
Right.
with something, or
Right.
if it's my own biases, if it's the inherent memory, if it's something which I have learned and adapted to, and that is, filling the idea. So these are the ideas that I try to dissect. And I remember reading this writer and cinema, this artist who also critiques the cinema as well. That, the things that are being shown to you. Her name is Laura Mulvey, and she is actually a she has
Right.
given a very constructive critique, that she says that how men sees women, how men sees women becomes the way a woman sees woman, and it also becomes the way a woman sees herself. And
Right.
at that
It
time,
becomes internalized. Right.
yes, because then it becomes a globalized way of looking at things. And
Right.
she just gave this thought, and it did stuck with me, because she is not just giving us a method to dissect this entire um, this hierarchy of looking, and who is being seen, what is being watched, how is it being
Yep.
watched, what is the
Yep.
information that you are saying, but
Mhm.
also that what narrates us to see things differently, right? So I thought that this was a
Right.
very this, like, her quotation, this line is very challenging for any artist who is looking at ways of seeing, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. The male gaze is something that we've discussed
Yeah.
sociologically and politically and in gender sciences all the time, gender studies, sorry, and of course it trickles down into art. So, how have you used your work and your, because if anybody's watching this interview, within the first 10 minutes they will be able to assess that you are somebody who takes a deep dive into things. That's the experience that I have received now, that you dive deep and you look at all the angles. So how have you taken that quotation and tried to, I wouldn't say adjust your work, but how has it contested with your work?
So, because I think I take information not just from like one thing, because like if I were to just take information from like I said, that I've been studying wedding cultures and costume and theater. So
Yep.
that has not just been the only lens that I've been looking at. I've been also looking at the simplicity side. I've been seeing how women were represented in the past, and how are they still being represented with the entire global politics as well. How the role of abaya, and that the simple side, the black color and its representation. So
Yep.
keeping them in mind, because there is a certain semiotics of different motifs or whatever that ends up being represented in an artwork, because it becomes part of art and it has its own connotations, right? So that is
Absolutely.
something that which I try to dissect. And secondly, when I'm doing that, in the process of it, I think my images do become maximalist style, if I put it, because th- I think it also talks about the fact that I'm overwhelmed by information all the time, and I just don't end up creating a simple artwork ever, and that has
Uh-huh.
become my style. Although I would like to see, I usually like artworks with more minimal aesthetics, but because my own idea of information is coming from an overwhelming space,
Yep.
I end up putting a lot of information. And this is how I feel about my own culture, that there is just so much being influenced by different elements, and things are always in parallel. There is not one thing at the end of the
No.
day, and I think that something will end up not being represented. So so I think, keeping that in mind, I end up creating a woman's persona, which is, in my view, is not
Yep.
mainstream. I try to create a different narrative for the women. Like
Yep.
this one, the piece which is here. This is
Yep.
something which I did in 2018, and for this, I don't know if you can see it, like this
We
one.
can see it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So this one is like has my features, but it's not me. This is the first work that I did using 3D modeling technology. But then I was using the reference of the lehenga of the lehenga of weddings. How they have
Yep.
such elaborate, bride has the costume, right? But then at the same time, the things that are being put together in this picture are not real, because this is not actual lehenga. It's actually a Barbie's dress. So, but then at the same time, it has that image of
Wow.
bride, right?
Wow.
So again, I question these boundaries, that again, when I was young, I used to play with Barbie dolls, but I always used to think, why am I playing with blonde haired girls instead of like
Right.
someone that can look
Not.
like me?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that is like, again, in my mind there is a conflict, and when you grow up, you have this another idea of what that life is different from the American dream that was sold to you as a child. So
I think even Americans in America realize that the American dream is simply just a dream.
yeah, but then
Especially in
it's not even
Pakistan.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Like,
Go
but
on, go
it's
on.
not even like a thing about one versus the other, or even the Oriental lens. I'm just talking about how my own personal, my own personal life has something to do with, the brought up, and then there's a conflict, right? So
Yeah.
through my images and my previous work, especially, um, I have referred back to those ideas and those boundaries between, how a costume can look like two different things, and because the pink color
True.
was a reference to the Barbie, but then the hair is mine. so
Amazing.
so so yeah, these
Absolutely.
kind of ideas.
Sumaya Jalani, loving this conversation. Sumaya, thank you so much for watching. I'm loving it too. I'm learning so much. And before I let her go, I have to ask her two very pertinent questions, which are about Pakistan and beyond Pakistan. So we've talked a bit about the limitations that we feel in Pakistan, whether it's about production of art, distribution, or exhibition. But how is Pakistan doing in the art scene overall? You see some outliers, but by and large, there's no culture of art or patronage anymore. Um, what can Pakistanis do to help facilitate such avenues? And when I say Pakistanis, I say Pakistanis at all levels in Pakistan. It starts with the prime minister and it goes down to anybody who's of the lower economic strata, because we have access to all of them, if not all of them, a lot of them will be able to watch what we're saying. So I would like you to address them or address them through me. What can they do to help facilitate whatever you're doing?
So, firstly, I think when I talk in the broader sense, I think the structure to generally support any kind of research, and I don't mean here as an artist, I just
Right.
mean any kind of innovative research with an idea that is groundbreaking in any field. It can be cross disciplinary, it can have more than one discipline.
Yep.
They are not being addressed, and there is zero funding available to kind of pursue them. And so I think that is also coming from a place of because there is no institution, there is no structure that supports these kinds of ideas. And secondly, it's coming from a place that there are not many people who are willing to take risk as much globally. You see that, if an idea or proposal is good, you get good funding. If you're
Yep.
addressing some environmental issues, you're addressing some mental health issue, and something this is something which I've done. I've addressed a lot of social issues in my work,
Of course.
talking about women empowerment, light pollution, through
Yep.
Cosmic Tribe. And then a lot of like related to the mental health, psychology, and again, even through the kind of works that I've been doing, like the
Yep.
ones you saw,
Yep.
they address more than one disciplines. But maybe it's difficult to explain to people that why this the work is important, because at the end of the day in Pakistan, if an artwork is tangible and if it is sellable, then yes, today it is valid. But
Yep.
for the research or the process of achieving something, that is something which is totally neglected. People just
Mm.
want to see the final product.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not interested in how the next project is going to take place, how that research is such a vigorous process that it requires 9 to 5, someone can sit and just sit on that topic because someone is interested to dive deeper into it. So that these
Yep.
ideas don't exist here, they're non-existent, and that is a problem on
That is
the
a
larger scale and on the individual level as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, and even in academic circles, I've noticed that the whole process of developing is just expedited and just produce, almost like a factory, produce a product, produce a building, produce a piece of clothing, as opposed to encouraging that process of form finding and
Yeah.
and testing and experimentation, and
Yes.
hopefully with the machine you'll be able to do it faster, but the speed is not the important factor. This is what I don't know if the rest of the world needs to realize this, because some of them allow the opportunity, but in Pakistan in particular, speed is not of the essence in this regard. You need to give space to the artist to do what they want to do and what they're trying to do, because they might find things. that you
Because
can't see.
just like a scientist, sometimes a scientist is able to create this very small impact in their entire life by discovering something, and that
Yeah,
happens with you diving deep. It's not something that can happen that, okay, I have a deadline and I have to meet it. And and I know that there are deadlines for everything. I mean, I cannot neglect that, because even as artists we have exhibitions and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah,
But especially, and I'm at the moment I'm referring to institutes like MIT, because there is no institute like MIT in Pakistan, or in world even. Like, there are very few which allows you that space to have those ideas and develop them through a new lens. And
yeah,
in those lenses, there are people coming in from different fields who have different kinds of concerns, but at some point your concerns meet, and they have different set of they have different sets of their own skills which can be added to yours, and you can achieve something big. So
yeah,
I think that structure is missing as well. And if somebody is doing something even minutely similar by researching, like I had my own struggles with my last project, light pollution based, and for
yeah,
that we were trying to get funding, and it was just not possible, because uh, when you try to explain AI and how the role of AI is so important in integrating your current ideas, that people are like, this is, we don't understand it, therefore we are not going to cater the thought.
Aisha, have you been to MIT yet? Have you been to Boston?
No, I haven't, but I generally do like listen to all of their lectures online, and I am in fact in contact with some of their professors, and maybe
Yeah.
I would like to go there for my masters. I haven't done my
Wh-
masters yet, but I would love to.
Whenever you decide to do that, please let me know. I have connections at MIT and Harvard and
Okay.
Stanford in particular who might be very interested in what you're doing. Speaking of that, because I grew up in England and I now live in Canada, my audience is cross Atlantic and in pockets around the world, Pakistan being one of the main pockets, but also India, Turkey. How can expats and locals living outside of Pakistan, so MIT is one example, how can they be more involved and engaged in your work, and how can they help move it forward? I don't mean just through patronage, I mean through, for example, right now, people living in Montreal may be seeing you where they may not have seen you before. So, how can they reach you? How can they engage with you? How can they get more involved?
So, because my latest projects are more towards, again, digital side, and I'm exploring the light pollution topic in more depth, and that is one project that I hope to do more seriously on a bigger scale. Uh,
Yep,
this is something that I'm working on with my proposal and with my people who are going to help me with this. So I would love to meet anyone who has done something similar, and by
yep,
similar I mean has some interest in coding, has some interest in AI, because in Pakistan I don't find such people. And if there are people who can help me reach out more to
yep,
audiences which who would be interested in environmental issues like light pollution and sustainable
yep,
fashion,
yep,
you can reach me out. I'm always available to have a good talk, see where it goes, and find collaborations, because on Twitter I was able to find a lot of people, artists, um, which I wasn't able to find on Facebook. So again, it also depends on the platform that you are also interacting on, because Facebook is very personal for me, and then on Twitter and Instagram I'm connecting with everyone.
yep.
So I would love to meet anyone who can support my upcoming ventures. And another thing that I was struggling with, and hopefully I would be able to reach out to someone, is that I'm looking for someone who can represent me as an artist, because I think there's so much on my plate that I want someone to take that burden off me, and I can just focus on art.
Right.
So because recently I was just thinking that, okay, this is becoming too much. If I'm just researching all day, then how am I supposed to find time to post stuff, reach out to galleries who would be interested in representing me as an artist who is working as a fusion with fusion methods, right?
So in
Digital and
Pakistan, do you have agents who represent artists? Is there a structure there?
no, not for the fine artists, only for the other talent like performing artists and models. So they have agencies now, but we only have galleries, and even galleries are very particular.
Yeah, yeah. That's so true. No, that's so true. No, so what I'll do is I'll definitely connect you to Karina, who lives in Florida, and I think you both will have so much to talk about. And there are a couple of other people, but they'll come to me when I think about it. Do share your details, and I'll just copy in the link. But see, an hour has passed, and we didn't even realize it. So thank you
Wow.
so much. We're going to stop here today. But Aisha, I'd love to have you on again, hopefully with Karina and my friend Kumari, who's from Sri Lanka, but she went to Harvard and now she's at
Okay.
Oxford. So
For sure.
she also paints, and I'm writing a book, and she's actually guiding me a lot in that design. So I'd love to connect you with the people that I have in touch.
Is the book
And
on
yeah,
art? The one that you're writing?
no, it's not an art.
Politics?
It's a novel actually, but
Oh, okay.
I
Wow.
have a couple of friends who are guiding me right and left, and Kumari is
Wow.
definitely somebody whose advice I trust. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I'm just going to
Thank you.
stop the live stream here. Thank you everyone for joining us with the Lachine Institute. Thank you for Aisha and Ali, and I hope your work grows bigger and better, and it takes over the world. I'm so excited marriage of art. Of you who resisted, stop resisting. This is a wave that is coming. Go with the flow and you'll be happy. Thank you so much. And I'm just going to go off live.